Hey guys, Megan here, the faithful fibromyalgia warrior, also known as Healing Foods Coach, also just known as Megan, or to some even Mom. So, today's topic. I was thinking about this a little bit today, and I wanted to talk about how there are so many people who would like to say that this carnivore or just any sort of animal based diet is like the newest craze, the latest fad. And in our short period of history as modern humans, it's easy to see how that would be the case. Certainly, since since the 20th century, where more and more cereals, grains, and sugars were introduced into our diets. Going back to an animal-based diet would be seen as a fad. But if we look back in time, I mean, like way back, like thousands of years, even tens of thousands of years, to our ancestors, like our ancient um, forefathers. So, like even as far back as the ancient Egyptians, actually even long before that, long before the ancient Egyptians, long before any of these old ancient empires like the Greeks or the Etruscans, um, long before what we understand as modern humans to our prehistoric ancestors, people ate mainly the skeletal muscle meat and associated fats of different animals. Whatever they could manage to catch and kill is what they would eat. And in fact, they would sometimes eat plants like berries or possibly fruit, um, whatever they could find while they were in between hunting expeditions as a way to boost their energy levels for short periods, and prevent starvation. But they didn't eat large amounts of grains or cereals, nuts, legumes, pulses, or seeds. They simply did not. And actually, there's a fascinating, I mean, really, really cool, fascinating interview um, that Dr. Ken Berry did about a year or so ago with Dr. Michael Eads, where they look at the scientific evidence from prehistoric through ancient and so forth times, um, to support the case that as humans, as a species, we have always, again, up until modern factories and processing and agriculture, have always eaten a mainly animal based diet. And if we think back, not even within, say, 200 years, but if we think back to the native peoples of different countries and continents, if we think back to, say, Canada and the States, or we think back to the Inuit, or some of the native populations that existed in the northern climates where plants simply did not exist because it was too cold, scientists have been able to go back and using isotope technology, determine from their bones, from their remains, what foods they would have consumed. And the majority of what they ate was animal meats, animal muscle meat, and protein, which is so cool. And there was almost no incidence of tooth decay or bone, bone growth issues. Um, there's very little evidence found in those cases of heart disease or diabetes, whereas you look at the populations that consumed a highly focused diet on plant materials, specifically more so things like cereals and grains, like the poor ancient Egyptians would have. And there's proof showing that many of them suffered with type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart issues. Even back in ancient Egypt, this was a thing because of their diets. Now, if you're wealthy or a member of the royal family, you could afford the meat. And fact used to be that it was the wealthy, it was only the wealthy who could actually afford meat and would eat it regularly and, did not end up with scurvy. It was the people who couldn't afford those things until they discovered the saving effects of citrus fruit, Many people would have died from scurvy through the Middle Ages because if they were poor, they were not getting protein. They were getting cereals and grains, maybe a little bit of egg now and again, maybe some poultry, certainly not enough to prevent scurvy. And it's just wild to think about how what we had been following from prehistoric ancient times is now considered a fad in this day and age. It blows my mind that sugar consumption, whether it's processed and added sugar, whether it's high levels of fructose, whether it's even outside of sugar, like manufactured sweeteners, all the chemicals that we put into food to make it taste good, to make it appealing, to make it addictive is normalized. And it blows my mind. I don't say that, by the way, with any sort of judgment. I really, really don't, because I was there. I lived that way for a super long time. I'll be 52 next month. And I spent, out of these last 4 years, I have been carnivore, but the 48 before that, I was not. And so it's kind of like the Matrix. I'm sorry about the lighting here, guys. It's a bit weird today. It's kind of like the Matrix. Okay. You don't realize you're in the Matrix while you're in the Matrix. And then if you take, I think it's the red pill, and you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm in the Matrix. This is not actual truth and reality. You can't go back. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. I lived the other way. And now that I understand the truths about the benefits of an animal-based diet, and again, for me, it has to be carnivore. I have lactose intolerance. I tolerate zero plants of any kind. Okay. So I don't eat either of those things. I don't eat dairy products other than butter. And that's what works for me. I would say that, however, there are many people who follow keto, ketovore, or a low carb diet who are doing extremely well and are healing incredibly. And that means if they're having vegetables, they're enjoying limited, like maybe a couple of fistfuls of non-starchy vegetables, or maybe not even vegetables. So that could be like onions, garlic, maybe tomato. Okay. Avocado, possibly broccoli. Or if they don't want veggies, but they want to include more dairy products, they can do that. Those things are carnivore. They come from the milk that came from a cow, right? So I'm not raining on anyone's parade. If you are trying low carb, keto, which just means less carbs, or ketovore, which is a few carbs, but less than keto, and certainly more meat, whether that's beef, lamb, pork, poultry, fish or seafood, whatever works for you, that's awesome. And I truly, truly mean that. But to say that these low carbohydrate approaches, low carb or no carb approaches to eating are simply a brand new fad isn't true. It's been the way humans have been eating from prehistoric times through ancient times, through a lot of the Middle Ages, and then, through the Middle Ages and onwards, it was less so because only the wealthy could afford to eat the protein. If you were poor, you ate the grains because that's all you could afford. But in today's day and age, I don't know if there's a valid excuse for that any longer, because generally speaking, most people have access to something healthier. You don't have to buy a bag of Doritos. And while I would say, I wouldn't eat carrots because of the starch personally, but if you were to cut up some celery, perhaps, or some avocado, or even just carrots or some tomato slices, that's better as a non-meat option. That's better than all the stuff that could be out there that is processed and garbage for us, right? I wanted to I guess I just wanted to make this video because I understand, you know, people who don't know any different, who are following the food guides they've been given, that we've always been told are right, that really aren't, but that's a whole other discussion. Are trying to do the best they can. And I just want to reassure anyone out there who's like me, who's coming from a standard Western diet, but you've reached the point where you're willing to try something radically different for maybe it's just weight loss, maybe it's for skin issues, maybe it's for a whole host of chronic and inflammatory health conditions like I had, fibromyalgia, IBS, hypothyroidism. I was 100 pounds overweight. I had arthritis and Raynaud's. I had severe crippling anxiety. I had depression, and I was bulimic for over 30 years. That's my story. You may not have any of that. You may have some of that. And all I would say is that for anybody who maybe says to you, "Oh, don't do the keto thing. It's just a fad," or certainly don't do carnivore because that's really a fad and there's no scientific proof. There is loads of scientific evidence to support it. I, as a +1 experiment, am living proof. I spent 9 years in a wheelchair because of all my medical health issues. I can walk for miles, but I could not do that for 9 years. I was in a wheelchair for 9 years, and now I'm not. So I'm simply saying that's my personal experience. And again, there are loads of people, even if you want to just start slow with low carb and maybe work your way up to keto or not, or ketovore or not, or even carnivore or not. Getting a lot of the plants out of your diet is going to help. Eating more animal skeletal muscle meat with the associated fats can only benefit you overall. It is definitely not a fad. Our bodies are designed to not only digest, but metabolize, use, and build our internal workings with those particular ingredients. Animal meats and proteins, animal meats, so proteins and animal sources of fat. Helps build cholesterol, keeps our hormones healthy, which help regulate everything from our hair to our teeth, our nails, our skin, to our mental health and well-being, and our thyroids that look after all those things. So what I've done is I've included in the description the link to Dr. Barry's podcast interview with Dr. Eads. You guys should definitely check it out. It is so fascinating. It's really cool. And especially if you're kind of like me, if you're a history kind of buff, and I love ancient and medieval history. So looking back on how they've tested the remains of mummified humans from Egypt and figured out what people ate and so on and so forth, it's really cool. That alone is super cool. But it really is, for me, it was reassuring and comforting that this is not just simply a fad. This is absolutely how humans should be eating, how we were always eating prior to the big agricultural revolution, and certainly up until the 20th century when everything became a lot more packaged and convenient. So I hope that you guys enjoy this video. Thank you always for your kind words, your comments, your support. And please let me know. Let me know how you guys are doing. If you guys are trying an animal-based diet, what you're eating, how you're feeling, how's it going. Let me know what's up. And I always find it encouraging to hear how other people are doing as well. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for all your comments. I apologize. I know the lighting has not been great, and it looks as though my video is kind of going in and out, but I hope you still enjoyed the content regardless. Thank you for everything. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. All right.